The grand auction hall buzzed with murmurs and disinterest as the spotlight fell on a horse lying motionless in the center of the ring. The chestnut stallion's coat was marred with scars, silent testimonies of hardship and neglect. The auctioneer's voice rang out, desperate to spark interest. "Who'll start the bidding? Do I hear an offer?" But the crowd was unmoved. Laughter rippled through the room. "What's the point? That horse isn't worth a dime," someone muttered. Whispers grew louder, laced with ridicule. "It looks like it's given up on life," a woman in a designer dress sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. Others nodded, their judgments sharp and final. The horse's eyes seemed dull, its spirit crushed by years of suffering. In that glittering, opulent hall, it was clear, this animal didn't belong. It was a spectacle of rejection, a discarded soul. No one spared it a second thought, until the unexpected happened. From the back of the room, a chair scraped against the polished floor, breaking the rhythm of cruel remarks. A young man, dressed in plain clothes and clearly out of place among the polished crowd, stood up. His voice was steady, though not loud. "I'll take him," he said. The words cut through the air like a blade. Heads turned in disbelief. "Him? Are you serious?" a man sneered. But the young man ignored the chuckles and shaking heads. His eyes were fixed on the horse, and something in his expression silenced even the harshest critics. The room fell into an uneasy quiet as he walked toward the ring. After completing the payment, he approached the fallen animal and crouched down to meet its gaze. The horse flinched, but didn't turn away. The boy leaned closer, whispering something only the horse could hear. To everyone's shock, the horse's ears twitched. And for the first time that night, it lifted its head. The crowd exchanged bewildered glances. "What does he think he's doing?" someone murmured. The days that followed were nothing short of astonishing. News spread quickly about the once-forgotten horse, now thriving under the care of its unlikely new owner. The transformation was undeniable. The stallion, once deemed useless, began displaying remarkable strength and intelligence. His gait grew proud. His eyes, once lifeless, now sparkled with purpose. People who had mocked the young man at the auction began to wonder, had they been blind to something extraordinary? But what had the young man done to ignite such a change? Why did the bond between them feel so unshakable? It was as if their paths had been destined to cross. The morning sun bathed the modest stable in a warm glow. The young man, Ethan Walker, stood silently, watching the horse he had named Phoenix, inspired by the mythic bird that rises from its own ashes. Ethan believed Phoenix could do the same. Phoenix stood stiffly in the corner, his muscles taut and his movements cautious. His scars, both visible and invisible, had built a fortress around his trust. Ethan knew he had taken on an uphill battle. But something deep inside him whispered, this horse was worth it. He spent hours outside Phoenix's stall, reading softly or simply sitting in stillness. He never forced interaction. He knew trust couldn't be rushed. Then, one quiet afternoon, something changed. As Ethan sat with his back against the wooden panels, Phoenix took a hesitant step forward. The soft sound of hooves on straw made Ethan glance over his shoulder, and his heart leapt. Phoenix's ears twitched nervously, but for the first time, he seemed curious instead of fearful. The breakthrough didn't come without challenges. The next morning, Ethan decided it was time to lead Phoenix into the pasture. But as soon as the bridle touched Phoenix's head, the horse reared up, letting out a panicked whinny that echoed across the field. Ethan quickly let go, his hands trembling. But he didn't yell. He didn't scold. Instead, he stepped back, giving Phoenix space, murmuring soothing words. It was clear, Phoenix's scars ran deeper than physical pain. They were rooted in betrayal. As days turned into weeks, a rhythm formed. Ethan would try, fail, and try again, each time making the slightest progress. He began piecing together fragments of Phoenix's story from his reactions. The way Phoenix flinched at sudden movements or froze at raised voices hinted at a past filled with cruelty. Ethan couldn't shake the anger that bubbled up at the thought of what this animal had endured. But that anger wasn't Phoenix's burden to carry. Ethan made a silent vow. I will replace every bad memory with one of kindness and patience. One evening, as the sky painted itself in hues of orange and purple, Ethan decided to try something new. He brought out a soft brush, careful to move slowly as he approached Phoenix. At first, the stallion stiffened, his muscles coiled, ready to flee. But Ethan's touch was gentle. His strokes were slow, rhythmic, reassuring. Gradually, Phoenix's rigid stance softened. His head dipped slightly. A soft exhale escaped his nostrils. For the first time, he relaxed under human hands. It was a small victory. But to Ethan, it felt monumental. What he didn't know was that Phoenix's transformation was beginning to stir whispers throughout the town. Those who had mocked him at the auction were starting to notice. Some were curious. Others skeptical. But all were watching, waiting to see how far this unlikely partnership could go. That night, as Ethan stood beside Phoenix under the fading light, brushing the horse's coat, he felt something stir in his chest, hope. Yet deep down, he knew. This was only the beginning. The days blended together as Ethan and Phoenix settled into their routine. Each morning, Ethan would rise before dawn, the crunch of his boots on the gravel path a familiar rhythm leading to the stable. Phoenix had grown accustomed to his presence, nickering softly when Ethan appeared. Though his eyes still held a flicker of skepticism, it was progress, measured not in leaps, but in quiet steps. Ethan cherished those small victories. Every glance of trust. Every step closer. One crisp afternoon, Ethan decided it was time to test Phoenix's boundaries further. He led the stallion to the open pasture, where golden light bathed the rolling fields. Phoenix hesitated, his hooves rooted in place, as if the open space triggered a memory too painful to face. Ethan didn't push. He simply stood beside him, patient and still. After a long moment, Phoenix took a cautious step forward. Then another. The sight made Ethan's chest tighten. It wasn't just a walk. It was reclamation, a step toward freedom lost long ago. But the serenity shattered. A loud, sudden crack, a branch breaking in the woods, echoed through the field. Startled, Phoenix bolted. His eyes wide with panic, he galloped in erratic circles, dodging invisible dangers only he could see. Ethan's heart pounded as he sprinted after him, calling his name. He found Phoenix near the edge of the pasture, trembling and wide-eyed. "It's okay," Ethan whispered, steadying his breath. "You're safe now." Later that evening, Ethan sat outside the stable, exhaustion written all over him. An older man approached from the edge of the property, his boots slow, his face weathered. It was Mr. Grayson, a retired rancher who had quietly observed Ethan's efforts for weeks. "You've got a good heart, son," he said, his voice gravelly with age. "But you can't fix what's broken if you don't understand where the cracks are." Ethan looked up, confused. Mr. Grayson continued, "That horse has seen things, endured things you can't imagine. If you really want to help him, you need to find out where he came from." The words echoed long after the old man walked away. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. What had Phoenix been through? Who had hurt him? Why had no one stopped it? As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Ethan stood at the stable door, watching Phoenix with new resolve. The stallion looked back, his eyes calmer than before, as if sensing Ethan's determination. The journey to uncover Phoenix's past would be painful. But it had to be done. The horse deserved not just a future, but closure. Ethan's search for answers began where it all started, the auction house. The office manager, a stout man with a gruff demeanor, barely looked up from his paperwork when Ethan walked in. "That horse. You're better off forgetting about him," the man muttered, his tone dismissive. But Ethan didn't back down. I need to know where he came from. I need to help him heal. The manager sighed, clearly annoyed, then reached into a dusty file cabinet and pulled out a thin folder. This is all I've got. Don't expect much. Inside the folder was a sparse description of Phoenix. A scribbled name stood out, Victor Harland. Listed as the previous owner, his address was a rundown ranch on the outskirts of town. Ethan thanked the manager and left, the file clutched tightly in his hand. But a chill crept through him. What kind of man could leave a horse in such a broken state? The drive to Harlan's ranch was long and heavy with uncertainty. When Ethan arrived, the place looked like it had been forgotten by time, fences sagged, barn doors hung loose, and the land felt bitter. As he stepped onto the porch, an older man emerged from inside. His face was hard. His eyes sharp and cold. What do you want? Harland barked. Ethan took a breath and introduced himself, explaining why he was there. At first, Harland brushed him off, calling Phoenix just another useless animal. But Ethan stood his ground, and slowly, the old man's defenses began to crack. Eventually, Harland admitted the truth. Phoenix had been one of many horses used for brutal labor, pushed past their limits with no regard for their well-being. He wasn't strong enough, Harland said flatly, as if that excused his cruelty. Ethan's hands clenched. His pulse raced with anger. But he stayed calm. Before leaving, Ethan asked one last question. Why did you send him to the auction instead of putting him down? Harland hesitated, his eyes avoiding Ethan's. I guess. I thought maybe someone would see something in him. I didn't. There was a crack in his voice, so small it almost went unnoticed. Ethan walked away with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear, Phoenix had endured more than anyone realized. That night, back at the stable, Ethan sat beside Phoenix and gently ran a hand along his scarred mane. I know where you came from, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. And I promise, you'll never go through that again. Phoenix turned his head slightly, meeting Ethan's eyes. In that look was the faintest flicker of trust. The bond between them had deepened. But Ethan knew. The journey was far from over. The truth about Phoenix's past clung to Ethan like a shadow. He couldn't shake the image of Victor Harland's cold indifference, or the broken conditions Phoenix had survived. Those memories, though not his own, played over in Ethan's mind like a haunting film reel. He spent hours beside the stall, saying little, offering presents. You've been through hell, he murmured one evening, gently stroking Phoenix's scarred neck. But I promise, that's not who you are anymore. Phoenix blinked slowly, his ears twitching, as if he understood. That moment, that faint recognition, gave Ethan hope. The next morning, he decided to try again. He led Phoenix out to the open pasture, this time carrying only a halter and lead rope. No bridle. No saddle. No pressure. Just patience. Phoenix hesitated. His hooves planted firmly in the grass. But Ethan didn't pull, he stood quietly, giving the stallion space to decide. After a long pause, Phoenix took a step. Then another. Until the two of them stood together in the middle of the field. Ethan smiled. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Word of their bond had started to spread across the small town. Curious strangers began stopping by the stable. Some offered quiet encouragement. Others came cloaked in skepticism, their doubt hidden behind polite smiles. Among them was Claire Thompson, a local veterinarian who had heard about Phoenix's condition. You're doing something incredible, she said after watching Ethan work. Her voice was warm, sincere. But he's going to need more than patience. His body's been through a lot. Her words struck a chord. Ethan had been so focused on rebuilding Phoenix's trust, he'd almost forgotten the physical damage beneath the surface. Claire offered to examine Phoenix and help build a recovery plan. Ethan agreed without hesitation, grateful for her knowledge. As she worked, Claire pointed out lingering signs of trauma, tightness in his muscles, old injuries that hadn't fully healed. "This won't be easy," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "But he has the will to fight. I can see it in his eyes." Inspired, Ethan began incorporating gentle stretches and strength-building exercises into Phoenix's routine. One evening, under the soft glow of the barn lights, Ethan brushed Phoenix's coat as he always did. But this time, something changed. Phoenix leaned into the brush, his eyes half closed, a deep sigh leaving his nostrils. It was contentment. Genuine peace. Ethan paused, his heart swelling. In that moment, Phoenix wasn't just surviving. He was beginning to live again. Just as hope began to feel like a steady presence, the quiet evening was interrupted by a sharp knock on the barn door. Ethan turned, startled. Framed in the moonlight stood a tall figure, broad-shouldered, serious, and unfamiliar. His boots crunched on the straw as he stepped inside. "You must be Ethan," the man said, his voice low and measured. "I've been looking for that horse." Ethan instinctively stepped in front of Phoenix, his grip tightening on the brush in his hand. "Who are you?" he asked, guarded. The stranger moved closer, stopping a respectful distance away. His expression was unreadable. "My name's Nathan Carter. I used to work with Victor Harland. That horse, he's not just any stallion. He was part of a competitive endurance training program." Ethan's stomach twisted. Carter continued, "Harland saw potential, but he pushed him too far. Ignored every warning sign. When Phoenix finally broke, he tossed him aside." Ethan's heart pounded. His voice tightened. "Why are you here now?" Carter's eyes softened, though a flicker of guilt lingered in them. "When I heard someone had taken him in, I had to see it for myself," he said, glancing toward Phoenix. "He's special. More than Harland ever realized. But he's also damaged. Horses like him, they don't always recover." Ethan's voice rose slightly, a hint of fire beneath it. "He's recovering now. I don't need your doubts." Carter raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, kid. I'm not here to take him. I just thought you'd want the truth." He paused, then added, "I saw what that horse could be, with the right care. I didn't have the guts to stand up to Harland back then. That's on me. But you've already done more than I ever did." Ethan didn't reply immediately. His mind spun with questions, his emotions caught between anger and curiosity. Finally, he asked, "So why now? Why tell me all this?" Carter met Ethan's gaze without flinching. "Because you're his second chance. And if you'll let me. I want to help." Ethan hesitated. He didn't know if he could trust this man. But Carter knew things that could help Phoenix heal. After a moment, Ethan nodded, slowly, cautiously. "All right," he said. "But if you're going to help, it's on my terms. Phoenix comes first." Carter nodded without hesitation. "That's the only way it should be." As the man turned to leave, Ethan glanced back at Phoenix, who stood quietly in the corner, watching everything unfold. The stallion's journey had just taken a new turn. And Ethan knew. They were stepping into uncharted territory. The next morning, Carter returned, this time with a worn canvas bag slung over his shoulder and a quiet determination in his step. Ethan stood at the edge of the stable, wary but willing to watch. Carter approached Phoenix's stall with calm, deliberate movements. "Horses like him need patience," he said, pulling out a bundle of ropes and a lightweight training saddle. "But they also need to remember their strength. We'll start with groundwork," he added. "No pressure. No stress. Just simple trust." Ethan nodded, unsure, but willing to learn. His eyes never left Phoenix. In the pasture, Carter demonstrated a series of exercises. His commands were soft, his movements fluid. At first, Phoenix's responses were guarded, his muscles tense, his ears flicking back at every shift in the wind. But Carter didn't push. He coaxed. He waited. Slowly, Phoenix began to mirror his movements, tentatively, then with more assurance. "See that?" Carter said, glancing at Ethan. "He's starting to move with me. It's not about control. It's about partnership." Ethan absorbed every detail. He wanted to understand, not just how to train, but how to connect. Over the following days, they built a delicate rhythm. Carter led early sessions. Ethan observed, then slowly began to take over. Each day, the bond between Phoenix and Ethan grew deeper. The stallion walked with more confidence. His strides lengthened. His head rose higher. And for the first time, Ethan saw glimpses of the horse Phoenix was meant to be. But with progress came new challenges. Phoenix still had moments of fear, flashbacks triggered by sudden sounds or unfamiliar surroundings. Ethan's heart ached every time, but he never gave up. One crisp afternoon, as they wrapped up a session in the pasture, Carter approached with a thoughtful look on his face. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. Ethan turned toward him, attentive. Phoenix wasn't just bred for endurance. He was trained for high-stakes races. Pushed hard. Trained harder. If you want him to truly recover, he needs to face the track again. Ethan's stomach turned at the thought. "To race?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. "Not for competition," Carter clarified. "Just to show him he can. To remind him that the track doesn't own him anymore." Ethan hesitated. The idea of putting Phoenix back in the environment that had nearly broken him felt wrong. "I don't know if he's ready," he said honestly. Carter placed a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You'll know when the time is right. But this isn't about the past anymore. It's about showing him what he's capable of now." Ethan looked across the field at Phoenix. The stallion stood tall, his posture calm, his eyes steady. The idea of returning to the track still frightened Ethan. But deep down, he knew Carter was right. The idea of bringing Phoenix back to a racetrack clung to Ethan's thoughts for days. He wrestled with doubt and fear. Phoenix had come so far, what if exposing him to the past unraveled everything they'd built? Late at night, Ethan sat by Phoenix's stall, seeking clarity in the calm rise and fall of the horse's breath. "If we do this," he whispered, "it's on your terms, not mine." The next day, Ethan shared his concerns with Carter, who listened without judgment. "There's a private track just outside town," Carter said. "No crowd. No pressure. Quiet. Controlled. It's the right place to start." The idea of a low-stress environment eased Ethan's mind. After a long pause, he nodded. They chose a date a few weeks out, just enough time to help Phoenix prepare. Ethan introduced small changes to Phoenix's routine, unfamiliar sounds, subtle track cues, different terrains. Bit by bit, Phoenix adjusted. His ears flicked, his tail swished, but he stayed grounded. Present. When the day arrived, Ethan felt tension in every part of his body. His fingers trembled slightly as he loaded Phoenix into the trailer. The stallion hesitated at first, then walked up the ramp with a quiet trust that humbled Ethan to the core. The drive to the track was silent. No music. No conversation. Just the hum of the road and the weight of the moment. When they arrived, Carter was already there, leaning against the fence, calm as ever. "Take it slow," he said. "This is his moment." Ethan nodded, heart pounding. As they approached the track, Phoenix stopped, his ears swiveling, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar space. His muscles tensed. Ethan stood beside him, murmuring softly. "You're safe. I'm right here." Phoenix took a step. Then another. Ethan walked alongside him, never leading, only following the rhythm Phoenix set. The first lap was slow, each step careful, measured. But by the second, something changed. Phoenix's stride grew stronger. His neck arched. His eyes focused forward. By the third lap, he wasn't just walking. He was moving, with power, with grace, with a quiet dignity that made Ethan's chest tighten. As they completed the final lap, Ethan stopped and placed a hand gently on Phoenix's neck. "You did it," he said, voice thick with emotion. Phoenix snorted softly, ears pricking forward, as if to say, "We did it." But as they turned to leave the track, Carter approached with a more serious look. "This was a milestone," he said. "But the real challenge is still ahead." Ethan nodded slowly. He knew exactly what Carter meant. The real racetrack, the one filled with noise, motion, and echoes of pain, was still waiting. But something inside Ethan had shifted. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready. And so was Phoenix. In the days following Phoenix's quiet triumph on the private track, Ethan felt the weight of what was to come. The real racetrack was nothing like the one they just walked. It was louder, larger, more chaotic. It echoed with memories, some buried, some still raw. Could Phoenix truly face it? Ethan and Carter began preparing Phoenix for that very test. They recreated the experience as best they could, playing recordings of cheering crowds, introducing him to new gear, leading him past fluttering flags and loudspeakers. Phoenix reacted with unease at first, ears pinned, breath shallow, but he didn't bolt. Each day, he steadied faster. Each session, he carried a little less fear. Still, Ethan worried. Was this too much? Too soon? Carter reassured him, "He's stronger than you think. You both are." When the day finally arrived, Ethan barely slept. He rose early, double-checked every strap, every line of gear. His hands trembled as he loaded Phoenix into the trailer once more. As they approached the racetrack, Ethan felt the change. It was vast. Empty stands stretched into the distance. The air was still, yet carried a strange electricity. It wasn't a full race day, but even the silence felt loud. Phoenix sensed it too. His muscles tensed. His steps slowed. Ethan placed a steady hand on the stallion's neck. "Just us," he whispered. "Like always." As they reached the starting gate, a track official triggered a starting bell, a sharp clang that echoed across the field. Phoenix flinched, reared slightly, his eyes flashing with panic. Ethan didn't panic. His voice was firm but gentle. "You're okay. I've got you." Slowly, Phoenix settled. His breathing slowed. His hooves touched ground. Ethan didn't ask him to run. He didn't even ask for a trot. He waited. Then Phoenix took a step forward. Then another. Side by side, they moved down the track. The wind swept through Phoenix's mane. The noise didn't matter. The past didn't matter. He was here now. By the halfway point, Phoenix was moving freely, his head high, his pace strong. He wasn't fleeing. He was choosing to move forward. When they completed the lap, Ethan stopped. He turned to Phoenix, brushing his hand down the horse's neck. "You did it," he whispered. Phoenix exhaled deeply, standing tall beneath the sunlight. At the edge of the track, Carter leaned on the rail, a rare smile breaking across his face. "You've done it," he said. "But this is only the beginning." And Ethan knew he was right. This wasn't just the end of a journey. It was the start of a new one where Phoenix wasn't just healing. He was becoming. The weeks following Phoenix's breakthrough at the racetrack were nothing short of transformative. Word spread quickly, first through town, then beyond, about the scarred stallion who had defied every odd, and the young man who had never given up on him. People who had once laughed at Ethan now spoke of Phoenix with admiration, even reverence. They called him a symbol of resilience. But for Ethan, this was never about proving people wrong. It was about giving Phoenix the life he had always deserved, one built on trust, patience, and second chances. One chilly morning, Ethan stood outside the stable, his breath visible in the air. Phoenix grazed peacefully in the nearby pasture, his coat catching the golden light of sunrise. The image didn't just bring peace, it brought pride. Carter walked up quietly and leaned against the fence. "You've done more than I thought was possible," he said, his voice low. "But I've gotta ask, what's next for you two?" Ethan turned his gaze toward Phoenix. The stallion lifted his head, ears forward, watching him. "I don't think it's about what's next for me," Ethan replied softly. "It's about what Phoenix wants. He's earned the right to choose his own path now." Carter nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. "Whatever it is. I know you'll make sure he's ready." As the days passed, Ethan began to notice subtle but powerful changes in Phoenix. The stallion moved with ease, his muscles strong, his eyes no longer clouded with fear, but filled with quiet strength. Claire, the veterinarian, returned for a follow-up visit. She ran her hands gently along Phoenix's back and neck, then stepped back, awestruck. "He's incredible," she said, smiling. "You've given him more than a second chance, Ethan. You've given him his spirit back." Ethan felt her words settle deep in his heart. Phoenix's story wasn't just about survival anymore. It had become something bigger. It was inspiring people, young and old. Schools began inviting Ethan to speak about Phoenix. His message was simple: healing takes time. But belief? Belief changes everything. At one local event, a boy, no older than 10, approached Ethan with wide eyes. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. Was he really broken? Ethan knelt to the boy's level, his voice gentle. "He wasn't broken," he said. "He just needed someone to believe in him." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Ethan stood beside Phoenix in the pasture. Their silhouettes stretched across the golden field, calm and still. The bond between them was unshakable, born of pain, strengthened through patience, sealed by love. Ethan placed a hand on Phoenix's shoulder and whispered, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Phoenix snorted softly, nudging Ethan in the chest, as if to answer, "We're just getting started." Side by side, they walked toward the stable, ready to face whatever the future held. Together. As the seasons changed and months passed, Phoenix's transformation became legend, not just within the town, but in places far beyond its borders. People traveled miles to catch a glimpse of the once-forgotten stallion who had become a symbol of resilience. But to Ethan, Phoenix was never a spectacle. He was a reminder. A living testament to what could happen when someone refuses to give up on another soul. The stable, once a quiet place of struggle and hope, had become a haven. Schools sent students on field trips. Families came to learn Phoenix's story firsthand. Reporters reached out. Documentaries were discussed. But Ethan kept things grounded. This was never about attention, he told a local journalist. It was about healing. Still, he understood the story needed to be shared. Not for fame. But because somewhere, someone else might be on the edge of giving up. One autumn afternoon, Ethan stood at the edge of the paddock as Phoenix galloped freely through the open field. His mane danced in the wind, his hooves kicking up soft clouds of dust. He was no longer the trembling creature from the auction ring. He was bold. Strong. Unbroken. Carter joined Ethan, standing beside him in the cool breeze. "You know," Carter said thoughtfully, "this place, this story, it's going to outlive us both." Ethan nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "I hope it does." Claire eventually helped Ethan establish a small rehabilitation program at the ranch. Horses with similar pasts, neglected, abused, discarded, began arriving. Ethan trained volunteers, taught workshops, and shared Phoenix's journey with each new visitor who needed a reason to believe again. One evening, as Ethan closed up the barn, he found himself walking toward Phoenix's stall like he had so many times before. The stallion stood waiting, calm and wise, as if he had always known they'd come this far. Ethan leaned on the gate, whispering into the twilight. "You changed everything." Phoenix stepped forward, resting his head gently on Ethan's shoulder. No words were needed. Because both of them knew, this story wasn't just about healing a broken horse. It was about what's possible when you believe in something, no matter how lost it seems. And in the quiet stillness of the evening, one truth echoed louder than any applause, any headlines, or any praise. Some spirits aren't meant to be broken. They're meant to rise. Just like Phoenix.